Chase Roullier
is not available.
And this would have been a fantastic podcast.
Oh,
Nothing?
is he calling you again? Hey.
Hello?
Hello?
There you are.
I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry.
The starting center. Am I allowed to say that? Like, you're the starting center for the Washington
I
football
think you're
team?
allowed to say that. I have started a lot the last couple of years. It's going into training camp, so you never know what will happen.
This is Shadowcast Radio.
Bro, that's a savage sound.
Welcome to Shadowcast Radio. Man, we have an awesome special guest today. And first off, you're listening with your host, Owen Brazington.
Preston Ackerman.
Nathan Brazington.
And I'm really excited about this episode. We get to actually have the joy of interviewing another brother, Christian brother in Christ. And Preston, I was hoping you might introduce him for us.
Yeah, so this is a brother I would have met in college. He was a football player on the team. We both were part of FCA together, did Bible studies together, those sorts of things. And, I mean, we can, again, dive into some of those stories if you want to, but we're excited to have on Chase Roullier. So welcome to the show, Chase.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, two quick questions. First off, how often do you hear your name mispronounced? And also, what are the ways that people mispronounce it? That's Roullier.
Yes, I would say probably about 80 to 90% of the time it is pronounced incorrectly.
Oh, man.
Is that even from
now that I'm kind of consistently on the same team for quite some time, I think my name has gotten down a little better.
Amongst
maybe
teammates and stuff, maybe your coaches.
Yes, but typically it's pretty rough. Roullier is definitely the most common one. Just kind of skipping that French ending altogether.
Yep.
But yeah,
I feel like
it's pretty rough.
I feel like just in sports, like my last name's Ackerman. It'd be pretty hard to mispronounce Ackerman, you would think. But I've heard even my last name mispronounced. I feel like in sports, that's just part of the course.
Oh, for sure.
Man, I hear that last name, and I can't help but think of, you probably have some fantastic chefs in your family. Am I correct?
I like to think that maybe I'm a fantastic chef.
Hey, there we go.
We're mostly talking barbecue here, though.
Hey.
That's a little different.
That's a chef in my book.
You got one of those Traegers?
I do have one of those, and I've tried to cook just about everything on there so far.
Nice.
So, most of it's turned out pretty well.
Don't you have like a marketing or some sort of sponsorship deal with Traeger or with some other guys?
I would have loved to have one of Traeger. A lot of football players have them. I, for some reason, could not get one of those, but I do have one with a power tool company because I do a lot of woodworking.
Nice.
Cool.
That's been really cool. Been able to get a few free tools to make some pretty awesome stuff out of it.
So making the marketing deals up in the NFL level. Okay, Chase. Sure. Okay, Chase. So tell us just a little bit about your background, where you're from, and kind of your sports journey from high school all the way to the NFL.
For sure. So I grew up in Savage, Minnesota. I went to Burnsville High School. Savage is a smaller town, so we don't have high school. Went to Burnsville High School. Played 3 sports there. I was into football, basketball, and baseball. Kind of grew up with those kind of dominating my life, I would say. I'm sure we're going to dive into my testimony a little bit later too, but those 3 things definitely dominated my life, like I said. And I eventually decided on football to really pursue that. and I got the great opportunity to allow that to pay for my schooling at the University of Wyoming.
Okay, so just a quick sec then. So diving into that, so were you recruited by UW, and what did that look like? Did you have other offers?
Yeah. So I did have a few offers. I got a lot of them early, kind of before I really felt comfortable committing to any of them, because I hadn't like gone and visited or anything, and I wasn't like a really top tier recruit. So like once their spots filled up, they weren't gonna like make room for me. Like I would have had to have accepted those offers before the spots filled up. And it got to a point where, I mean, it was pretty much between Wyoming and like I had one other smaller school left. And I went on my official visit to the University of Wyoming and loved it. And
who was the coach who would have recruited you? Because that would have been before. It was before Bowl, right?
Dave Christensen, then, I'm the official, and I fell in love with the state and just the school. I mean, football program was great too at the time. I mean, we were kind of up and down a lot back then, but it still was a Division I program playing a good conference, so that was an exciting thing too, as a senior in high school, looking forward to the future.
Okay,
cool.
And so now you transition from high school era, and you guys can jump in with any questions you want to at any time. So you're at the high school level of competition, and then you jump to the University of Wyoming, which is a D1 college in the Mountain West Conference, right? And so just give me a little bit of insight into that transition. Was it pretty tough? I know that in high school, you have like the JV to varsity transition where stuff, people are faster, people are more talented, stronger. Was that the same experience with you? When did you start actually getting some snaps at the college level?
It was definitely transition. I did go to a larger school in Minnesota, so maybe the transition was not quite as high as some others, but it still was a big transition, going from a high school level to now playing against, guys that only, I think it's like the numbers 3% of guys go on to play Division I football from high school. So like you're talking about like the top 2 to 3. It might even be less than that. I don't know the exact number is what the number is. You're talking about guys that are the very best at that sport, and guys that have been playing football for longer than I have, and are very intelligent with it. And it was definitely a difficult transition. And I was fortunate, actually, my redshirting, so it was my true freshman year. I was technically redshirting, but I was like second on the depth chart, which could have meant like at any time I could have gone into a game. So I was preparing like I could have go into any game, even though I never ended up having to, and burning my red shirt. And so that, I think, in itself prepared me throughout that year very well, because I got that like extra year of preparation that I probably wouldn't have had I just been redshirting and been on the scout team, and not necessarily prepping for an opponent every single week, which that in itself is a whole nother part of football, just being ready to go against another opponent.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. Did you think when you went into the college level, did you find most of your drive, was it more of the coaches pushing you for striving for excellence, or did you find that came mainly from yourself, your own drive, or was it even your teammates?
Yeah, I think that I've always had a lot of drive myself, but I've also always had a lot of drive for my family. I grew up in a family that was, sports were a very large part of all of our lives. I grew up before I was old enough to be playing sports. Like I was traveling to everything my sister was playing in, which she was like a 3-sport athlete too. So, before I came to age, we were traveling all over the state of Minnesota to watch my sister play in all these tournaments. So like, that was just kind of part of what we did, and something that I'd say, especially my dad, like pushed me to do We had close family friends that like he was a coach at the high school that I ended up going to at the time. Even though I was still in like elementary school, we were like working out with the high schoolers because he was a coach there. So like all these things were just like pushing me forward into trying to become an elite athlete, essentially, like even at a very young age. And that was very much through my family and my family friends as well.
Sure. So there was just that was the expectation, right? Your sister had a lot of success. You were, you yourself, obviously you had a self-motivation, but it was just part of the family dynamic of working hard.
For sure.
So did you also have, like every child who plays football ever, like the same dreams and aspirations of making it to the NFL?
Definitely. When you're that young, it is like truly just a dream. Like you're kids. So like your dreams are like, yeah, that could happen someday. But, it still was a pretty far-fetched dream, because even as a child, like I think I have a tendency to be kind of a realist, and I probably even as a child was not totally thinking that I could do that necessarily, but it was still a dream.
Mm-hmm. So did you always play center or line, or did you move around a little, or?
Yeah, I mean, so back then I played like both sides of the ball. So,
sure.
But I've always been a lineman. So like I've played every position on the offensive line and probably every position on the defensive line through my. Sure. I mean, I started playing football in second grade, so. Wow. I mean, I don't know how many that years that is now.
I don't think you were even allowed to play football here until fourth grade, if I remember right.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be playing in second grade.
You were big enough to pass for the.
To give you a good example of my parents pushing me, my parents actually said that I was in third grade and signed me up. Even though I wasn't in second.
There you go.
Oh, that's awesome.
What grade does he have to be in? At least third grade.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, that's it.
Pretty much.
He's in that one.
So do you like, maybe this is getting ahead of the game. So are you pretty happy at center, or do you is that your favorite line position? Or, I mean, maybe you're pretty locked in now, but.
Yeah.
I hope you like it.
Yeah.
I do like it. I think center plays to my strengths as a football player very well, especially at the level I play now. I'm not necessarily like the biggest, the fastest, the strongest guy out there, but at the center position, you don't necessarily need to be those things. You can get away with being more of a technician and a guy that knows the playbook in and out and what the defense is going to do.
Because you make the calls, right?
Yeah, you can get away with more of your brain per se, instead of all physical characteristics. Not to say like other offensive line positions, like you need your brain a lot in those other positions too. But I think center allows me to maybe use those strengths of my mind more so than the strengths that I might have physically.
Right. Well, and Preston tells us that you are a very intelligent guy, so that makes sense to me. Tell us about your college major, and if you think you'll ever use that, or.
Yeah. So I got a degree in mechanical engineering.
Wow.
I don't know what that will look like if I use it in the future.
He's become a marketing guru now.
A woodworking chef.
The woodworking that I've been doing, I think, really has given me that little bit of engineering fix that I missed. It's probably not exactly the math that I'm used to doing. Like I don't exactly need to do any calculus while I'm doing woodworking, but
on the line.
Yeah, there's more. There's some trigonometry in there and stuff. So I'm still using a little bit, but but honestly, I don't know. It kind of whether I go back to like a true engineering job. I think just kind of depends on how long this dream lasts. Really living.
So let's pause that for a sec. So let's again step into the past, into your sort of high school growing up era. Now tell us a little bit about. Your spiritual development, coming to faith in Jesus, and just give us a little bit of your the initial part of your story there, and then we'll talk about from that to UW.
I grew up in a family that is Lutheran. I don't know how familiar any of you guys are with that. But so I grew up very young. Like I was baptized as an infant, and then went through confirmation as a Lutheran. And I always understood who Jesus was and what he did for me, and I believed in him. But the relationship with Jesus was not necessarily such an emphasis that was put on in the Lutheran Church. And that was something that took me far longer to fully understand. And so through high school and through even middle school, I mentioned this earlier, football, baseball, basketball, all those things really consumed my life. And so those became idols in my life, things that didn't allow me to pursue the Lord as I should. And honestly, at that point I don't even know that I understood that was something like I needed to do, was to pursue the Lord.
Sure.
It was something that I hadn't necessarily felt yet, and it wasn't until college where I really started to grow in my relationship with Jesus.
And so you transitioned from high school, you kind of have an understanding of the gospel.
Yes.
You grew up in a religious household and background, and then actually you transfer to the University of Wyoming, still in a similar kind of position there, still kind of developing, figuring this thing out. Okay, so then you arrive in Laramie, right? And then how do you get plugged in, and what does that look like?
So I had a great teammate, Josh Teeter, who I'm name dropping here. I hope
shout out to Josh Teeter.
Josh, hoping you're listening.
He really pushed me and another one of my buddies to come to FCA, and I think it probably took a couple invites before we ended up coming. We finally started coming. I don't think we missed a week after that. We started going to, there were these retreats in Estes Park that still have them. I went to like 3 or 4 of those. Those were incredible experiences just in my journey in Christ. And then I also had the opportunity to go to Haiti a couple times, which those 2 trips were so important in my journey as well, and just growing in the Lord and understanding what it is to be a Christian. And I think that all was happening in maybe like 2 years, and it was just I didn't necessarily ever have one of those like epiphany moments like many people say they have in a testimony, but for me it was like that 2-year period where I'm like, wow, this is what I want, and I want to keep pursuing this.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Chase. I just think that is so important, especially during like the college years. I'm going to throw a little pitch out to the Navigators. I myself was a Navigator with my brother, and just was a big fan of that that ministry on campus. And that is their motto was making disciples who make disciples. And it sounds like that was just something where someone came alongside of you and just was just developing relationship with you and persevering and just saying, hey, I want to walk alongside of you while we both walk alongside to a road that draws us closer to Jesus. And I just I commend your friend there. I hadn't met him before, but I think, man, that is just a cool model.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, FCA is Fellowship of Christian Athletes, a great organization.
Absolutely.
And so really cool. That's really good.
Cool. So you have, those, how many years were you at UW? Would that have been 4, since your red shirt would have been used up?
So I never burned my red shirt, as they say. Cool. And so I was there for, what would have been 4.5 years total.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so then during the duration of your time there, you're getting plugged in, you're also studying and doing a lot of math with your major, but also you're devoting a ton of time toward the evenings with practice and with, meetings, right? And so then, so do you have any like memorable moments that you have during the UW University of Wyoming era that sort of quickly come to mind?
I mean, one that jumps out like in terms of football, which I don't know if you want like football
Sure.
and something
Anything.
else too, but
Whatever you want, man.
the one thing that really jumps out for we beat Boise State for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
And obviously, like that is like it's in such dramatic fact. Wow, I can't talk right now.
No worries.
Such dramatic fact, and that I just having that come down to the wire and be such an important game for the whole state.
Yep, I remember exactly where I was at. I would have graduated, so that must have been past 2016, right? At least if it's the memory that I had, because I remember.
Yes,
it was actually
that was my senior year.
your senior year. So I was in Louisville, Kentucky at the time, and I remember watching the game, and it went so late. Like the game went into the night, and Louisville's on the Eastern time zone, and so it was late into the night. I'm like at the gym in our apartment complex, like by myself in the dark, walking on the elliptical and or on the treadmill, excuse me. And actually, I remember Chase, you actually, I took a photo. I think I actually posted it to Facebook, but you were highlighted in that game for some reason. But I do remember the sweetness of beating Boise State because we were huge underdogs. So
Man.
that's one of my favorite memories too. Also, another favorite memory that we shared would have been at one of those Estes Park retreats where we were the dodgeball champions of the Estes Park FCA retreat.
Well, I was gonna ask you, do you ever regret going the path of the NFL and instead wish you had pursued professional dodgeball?
I think that would have been
because you had quite the impressive resume for dodgeball.
I don't know how well my arm would have held up.
Yeah.
I think your parents would have been proud, though. No, just kidding. So tell us about the transition then from college to NFL, what that's been like, not just as a football player for sure, but also as a believer, what that's looked like.
Yeah. So it's kind of a crazy transition into the NFL in so many different ways. Like specifically as just in terms of football and like skill, but like guys are both bigger, faster, and stronger. But that's not even the biggest difference. It's how smart everyone is in the league. So you got to think like in college, you've got guys that, they've only been playing on this team for maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 years.
Sure.
Now you're going against these vets that have been playing football for, I don't know, they could have been in the league for 10 years already. And so they've learned so many different things that allow them to know exactly what I'm doing as an offensive lineman, which that's not something I was used to having to deal with. Defensive players typically are very like instinctual players that are trying to get to the ball. But in the NFL, like they're so smart that they're not necessarily just all instinctual. They will actually study what an offensive lineman's doing, and they'll get tips and tells and figure out how to defeat your block ahead of time, and all these different things that you're now having to think about out there while you're on the field. So in addition to being bigger, faster, stronger, they also have that big jump in just their mental state out on the field. I think that's the biggest difference. And in terms of like the locker room, it's different in the fact that like college, like guys are out there, sure you have a scholarship and whatnot, but like you're mostly out there because you truly love the game of football and like you're fighting for your university and your state. The NFL, like it's a little different because now guys are out there fighting for like their livelihood and their job. So it's a little different. Like some of those things might be positive, some of them are sometimes a little more negative, just because there's money involved. But That's a big difference too.
I'm sure part of it too is a branding thing. Like you get paid a lot for, like if you're a well-known player or you have a specific sort of skill set that's commendable in the league, you all of a sudden are more marketable amongst business personnel. Sure. And so now you have a brand you have to keep up along with that. Sure. And you're not always necessarily tied down to an organization. That's not a guarantee. And actually, that's a question I wanted to ask you. What's that been like in terms of not knowing necessarily that there's a guarantee that you're going to be with the Washington football team for the following years?
For sure. That's definitely an added stressor. You know, I would never have gone into a new football season at the University of Wyoming and think like, oh, like
I'm about to get transferred over to Utah.
Yeah, like that doesn't happen, obviously. That would have to be my choice in order to do that. So that's definitely an added stressor, especially, you know, being here and like married to Sarah and having our home now. You know, we're renting a home. We have all our stuff in here. Like if I were to just get a call one day saying like, hey, you're moving to, I don't know, Denver or something like that. I mean, that stress of that possibility definitely looms over everyone in the NFL.
For sure.
That's part of the reason why like some people never actually put roots down with where they live. They, you know, have a tendency to like have roots elsewhere where they grew up and then just spend the season in this other city that they play for.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that makes me think like, does that make it difficult to develop like a good Christian fellowship with the area you're at? Has that been a struggle for you?
I think that it does make it a little difficult in some aspects, especially like during the off season. So I'm here in Virginia year round. We don't go anywhere else, and there's very few guys that stay here. So you know, especially during this off season where everyone was gone for 7-8 months.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, we were here with just a handful of people, which like we get to know those handful of people great, but it does, in terms of, I guess, fellowship, make it a little more difficult because there's a lot of guys and families that you have not seen now for 8 months at a time.
Sure.
But when they are here, like there is a lot of great resources in terms of spirituality, like you said. You know, we have a team chaplain where we have chapel before every games, which he's a full-blown pastor at a pretty big church here. So it's basically like getting a sermon the night before. It's pretty great.
Oh, so you have those on Saturdays?
Yes, and our chaplain will actually bring in pastors from other churches in the area, almost to give you a little taste of some different churches in the area for you to be able to get plugged into a church, which is a really cool idea. So we do that, and there's, I mean, depending on the year and like who is on the team at the time, there could be anywhere between like 2, 3, 4 Bible studies at any points throughout the year. So like, I know like when we had Colt McCoy on the team, he was running a Bible study. There was one that the team chaplain was running, and then there was like another like couples Bible study for guys that are married on the team. Like there's a lot of opportunities with that.
That's cool.
So during the season, there's definitely some great opportunities for that.
Okay, so by the way, if you ever get traded to the Denver Broncos, if you hook me up with some ticks, I'll go out there and we'll have a Bible study.
Wow,
sounds good.
Denver, if you're listening, yeah.
So I'm assuming then you have some decent amount of teammates that are believers. What's kind of the spiritual background right now in? I know you can't speak to all of the NFL, but is there still a fairly strong basis of believers on the teams, do you feel like? Or I know we're kind of moving as a culture into a post-Christendom era. What's that dynamic like?
Yeah, I obviously cannot necessarily speak to like the rest of the world and like the working population, but I would almost say that as an NFL, it's probably a higher percentage of Christians than maybe like your typical corporate America.
Sure.
Like I can't say that for sure, but like there's a lot of guys on every team that would at least consider themselves Christian.
Sure.
You know, at our chapels every like Saturday. I mean, it's darn near like half the team sometimes. So like there's a lot of guys that do try to be pretty involved.
That's cool.
Their involvement isn't like you never know like how deep they're getting with that. Like,
Right.
Are they coming because it's the night before a game and they're trying to get a little extra help on the day after?
From the Lord.
That is like sometimes what guys' motivation truly is.
Sure,
but,
sure.
There's definitely a lot of believers among the NFL, and I would say that it's pretty strong throughout the whole league.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And you've been there a few years now. Are you becoming a well-known in the locker room as far as that go? Like, has your leadership role been stepping up on that end, or you're not one of the newest guys, anyways, for sure?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely. That's something that I would like to strive to be. I've never been someone who's like a very like outspoken leader. I've for sure been more of like a lead by example type of guy. Yep. And so me branching out and talking about Jesus with teammates is something that I always have on my heart and something that I want to be doing and want to be doing more of. But there have been plenty of guys in the locker room that are more that type of person and have done great by that, including with me just coming up and having great conversations about it.
That's cool.
Like,
cool.
Like Colt McCoy. I mean, I'm about to name 3 quarterbacks here, but like
every
Colt
quarterback
McCoy,
in the NFL is a Christian.
Colt McCoy, Case Keenum, and
Case. Oh, even
are all great Christians.
Sorry, who was the last one you said?
Kirk Cousins.
Oh, Kirk. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's cool. And I mean, but obviously, I don't want you to sell yourself short. Sir, I put a lot of stock in the lead by example and seeing your character day in, day out. But you're married, and so you're leading a family. And presumably, is there anything else in the picture further down the line of more family members? Or is that way out in the future?
We would like to do that. We're
cool.
Not currently in
Sarah there.
Is she listening?
Is Sarah listening?
That is something we definitely want in the future.
That's awesome.
We don't want to be ahead of your family announcement.
No, sorry.
No, that's cool, man.
That is cool.
I would say what do you think are some of the biggest I guess challenges for a Christian in the NFL? I think we all of us, whatever industry you're in, Christians face trials and tribulations of one sort or another. And I was just curious, is there any particular trials that stand out to you that Christians might face in the NFL?
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely a level of like extra temptation. You know, typically a guy in the NFL, he's gonna have some more money. So he's going to be able to buy some extra things and for sure live much more worldly. You know, when you're out buying a bunch of extra things that you don't need, you're going to be living pretty worldly. And that's that's something that I personally struggle with too. You know, like if something isn't quite up to par, like I just bought a new like laptop. Granted, the laptop I had was from like 10 years ago, so it probably was time to change it.
No judgment there, man.
That's something that like that like, dude, did I really need to get like the best of the best of that? Because like I don't even use it that often. So like, so that's something temptation wise that I think that some guys around the league probably struggle with. And then there's also the whole added aspect of people know that about you, and might try to get close to you because of that, and that can lead to a lot of other challenges as well, with friendships, relationships, whatever else,
or even family. I bet too, in some instances,
family too, for sure. Yeah.
So that's some of the downside. What's been some of your favorite parts of playing for Washington, just being part of that organization?
Yeah. So I know we've been in the news a lot about like negative things as a team, but it really is like a very, like I mentioned earlier, a storied franchise that has a lot of history, a lot of cool history, of Super Bowl winning teams, a lot of fantastic offensive lines as well, which that in itself is a cool thing to be a part of.
The Hogs, right?
The Hogs, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So it's cool to kind of have that legacy to play behind, essentially. And honestly, the locker room and the guys that I've met, there's been so many great people. We've probably had a bit more turnover than some other teams with the sheer number of injuries we've had. We've had guys rolling in and out, but I've definitely met some fantastic guys and had some good relationships because of that.
Cool. That's awesome.
So then just as far as like football talk, so you enter into the league, drafted, pick 199, right? Tom Brady pick. Yeah. Shout out to Tom Brady. I know he's a friend of the show, but so pick 199, that's you're drafted in the 6th round, and you enter into the league and you're a rookie now, right? And so now as a rookie, you're not going to be granted the starting position. You will have to work for it, right? And so you're probably lower on the depth. Did you get much playing time that first year?
So we had a lot of injuries, and so I actually ended up getting a fair amount, not until about the second half of the year. But I think I started, 6 or 7 games.
Okay, so then think back to that moment then when you actually begin to play your first snaps and your first starts. What was that moment like for you on at the highest level?
Yeah.
It was scary.
Were you like, what am I doing here? Or were you like...
My very first snaps were against Fletcher Cox, who I don't, maybe you don't necessarily know who he is, but he is a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. He's listed at like 310, but the guy weighs probably at least 330, probably more than that. He's a massive human being, a very, very good defensive tackle, and that's who I had to start up against. Nice. And I was at a position that I had hardly practiced because I went in for the first time at right guard. And I've been practicing center the whole time. And so that both those things put together made for a very scary experience. But I did okay. So, I was able to move on from there and continue to play. So.
Praise the Lord.
It was all better from there, right?
I hear with many players, you get smacked once really hard and you're like, okay, this is where we're at. And then from there, you kind of you're acquainted with the temperature and then you're able to perform. So
that's awesome. What was it like being drafted?
Oh, it was a crazy experience. Coming from Wyoming, I was one of those players where, like, if you look at any of those mock drafts, like some people maybe had me going in like the 3rd round, and then tons of people had me being like an undrafted guy. So like me looking at that, I'm like, I don't know whether I'm getting drafted or like where I'm going to get drafted. So a lot of guys have like draft parties, but like I didn't want to have this big massive draft party. And I didn't even know that I was. Yeah, and I didn't want to like not get drafted. That would have been a whole extra stress on top of it. But I just had my immediate family there and Sarah, and we. It was super exciting.
That's awesome, man. That's super cool,
dude. I can only imagine, man.
So, and how did you and Sarah meet? You met in college then?
Yeah, so we met through FCA actually, and then got to know each other on my second trip to Haiti actually.
Cool.
And started dating right after that. So
That's cool. Well, I wanted to ask real quick too. Were you a Minnesota fan growing up, or
Vikings fan?
Okay, I assumed you were probably a Vikings fan. I didn't know, but okay, that's cool. And you would have played.
Your teammates. You would be teammates with Adrian Peterson, right?
Yep, right now.
Right now. So tell me what it was like meeting him, and did you kind of fanboy, or did you have to play it off cool, or what?
I mean, you got to play it off cool, but internally I was for sure fanboying, or as I put, fangirling. I think that's the more common way to say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a really, really cool experience. Especially now, just like being able to block for him all the time.
That guy's a legend. Like,
yeah,
it'd be hard to.
Cool. I've definitely gotten a little more used to it. Like, I'm not like, oh, that was Adrian Peterson again. Like, that's crazy. But
like you and Big A are friends now.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I try to be.
That's cool.
So, did you have any other players that you like looked up to that you got to meet? Who were some of the more interesting or exciting characters and players you got to meet throughout your time, throughout the few years you've been in the league?
For sure. So, I mean, we've had some pretty legendary players just on the Redskins too, like guys like Vernon Davis have been around the league forever, and like fantastic guy. There was all this stuff with Trent Williams, but he's also like a legendary left tackle in the league too. So just playing with him too was an incredible experience as well. And I mean, you obviously play against a lot of crazy guys that you watched when you were younger that you can't believe they're lining up against you. But
you ever get smacked by like Von Miller or like Tamarcus Ware or
Preston is a Denver fan, obviously.
I think he knows this.
So I have had to go against Von Miller because they sometimes will like bring him right on the center, because typically we're not as good at pass blocking as like a left tackle. So he'll come inside and kind of just dance around a little bit. So I had to do that a couple times, and one of them definitely didn't go too well, but I got him a couple. So
Nice,
man, nice.
You're good.
Well, it's really neat though, because I know for younger listeners out there, it's awesome to kind of get a little story of someone that once is walking with Jesus and is in a place that's a pretty cool opportunity to do that. Certainly, I'm sure you have a ton of pressures that a lot of us will never know about, but I still remember we loved hearing the testimony of Reggie White. That's how we became fans of Green Bay, and so it's really neat for sports fans to be able to hear the story of someone that's having success, that has put in the work and got his blessing and walking with Jesus.
And is able to be vulnerable enough to even talk about the things like the pressures of money, like the idolatry that exists there. Like, I feel like with so many people, you do, when you're young and you're an athlete, you do have those aspirations. Oh, if I get to the NFL, then that'll be my ultimate dream and I will be happy. If I find success in that realm, then I'll be fulfilled, right? But ultimately, those things inevitably, if you make them ends, they're going to let you down.
Right.
Well, and Chase, I would just kind of as a closing question, I was curious, what advice would you offer to any Christian athletes that are progressing and doing well and finding themselves even going into the college level or even maybe on to the NFL? Is there any advice that you would give to them or encouragement?
For sure. So this is advice that I typically will give I do some local FCA stuff out here. So this is definitely some advice that I usually give, and that's to make sure you're putting Jesus first, because just like I made the mistake growing up, as an athlete, we put so much of our heart and our blood and our sweat and our tears into our sports that we play, that we can sometimes put God second or even third sometimes, and that is what we can't do, because we need God as our foundation, as need God first in order to live our lives as Christians, and that's the only way we're going to be fulfilled. And
Amen.
I think just making sure you're on top of that and thinking about that and praying about that as a Christian athlete, I think that's a very important thing to do.
Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." And so keeping the main thing, right? Jesus as the forefront of our desires and our affections, and then all those secondary things, even if they're careers and they're sustaining us, those ultimately will find their right place and purpose with Jesus being the herald, the top,
That's good.
the point of reference.
Yep.
Well said.
Man,
Wow.
Chase, I just appreciate it so much, man. Thank you so much for being willing to do this and to spend an hour with us on this on this episode. I'm excited. So as far as the heading into the next season, then I mean, I don't know if I haven't done too much research on it, but as far as COVID-19, are the plans to move forward still with the season?
Are you going to have a bubble?
Or are you going to play in? Are you going to play in hazmat suits?
It's a very fluid situation, but right now we're pushing forward as if we're going to be able to play a somewhat regular season. Whether fans will be in the stands is kind of yet to be seen.
Are you going to have those like virtual, weird-looking fans,
Cardboard
like
fans?
the NBA and the? Well,
I don't know.
the MLB has the weird cardboard. At least, like in the NBA, you have like virtual fans.
Yeah.
Well, if they do have virtual fans, we will be at every game supporting
There we go.
Yep, number 73 of the Washington football team, pending possible name changes. I guess we'll see about that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Chase, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you being on.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've been listening to Shadowcast Radio with our special guest, Chase Roullier, and we wanted to thank him for coming on, and together all four of us just hopefully pointing you all to Jesus. Have a good night.
God bless.
We'll see you.
Chase, man, I appreciate it. You still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Dude, thank you so much,
Thank you, man. That was great.
I'd love to spend time and catch up, but it's probably 10 o'clock there. And do you have position meetings and stuff early in the mornings?
Yeah, I gotta get going to bed.
No worries, man. Tell I see you looking over at Sarah. Tell Sarah I said hi. Hey, Sarah, how you been?
She's not there.
You were looking though.
Fake out.
You're like, all right, man. Well,
thank you for your time. We appreciate you.
It's been a blessing.
All right, man. I'm cheering you on.
We'll see you, brother.
Go Washington football team. All right, take care, man.
Thanks,
Bye.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you for listening to Shadowcast Radio. All music is produced by our friend Andrew Nealand. Administrative support provided by Jess Brazington. Each show is written, produced, and hosted by Owen Brazington, Preston Ackerman, and Nathan Brazington. Please reach out to us with your comments and questions at feedback@shadowcastradio.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. To learn more about the show, visit us at shadowcastradio.com.
Thank you for listening. Come back next time.